second half before he came on.
Yeah, and it felt like it kind of maybe controlled Leeds a little bit more. They built into the position for the next try, the Sutcliffe hat-trick try, which is actually pretty similar to the Faré try. So it was a good take from a crossfield kick, kind of getting himself on Faré, actually, wasn't it? That he leaped over to take the ball, and then I suppose came so much of the heated moments in the game, didn't it? There was the Dudson sin bin in for a clear headbutt. He's followed the player looking to get his head involved, and then
it was a clear headbutt, but it was again a rubbish headbutt. If you're going to do something that stupid, at least make it count. Yes,
it didn't have the power and weight that you'd think a grade C charge might warrant, but obviously grading for things like headbutts, because given that they're a stupid play, maybe get graded a bit higher. Did he? I don't know, but he's got a 3-match penalty notice.
That Liam Watts did when he was still playing for us, and all Radford did afterwards was call him out for how pathetic it was.
Yeah.
I mean, what a stupid thing it was, but also, why get sent off if you're barely going to even make contact?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's certainly all it seemed to do is get his own teammates more angry. And that led to Mitchell Pearce as well getting his sin bin in, didn't it, for disputing a decision from the referee. He's got a grade B charge for that, a 1-match penalty notice. Gil Dudson, actually, with that 3-match ban, he's going to miss a chunk of the group stage of the World Cup for Wales now, so that's not good for him.
No.
Dylan Napper also got a grade B high tackle charge, 2-match penalty notice, so I guess that'll affect the Cook Islands World Cup. I think he's going to be playing for them. But he didn't get a card. He's one of the players that maybe, when Esther's alluded to should Child have brought the cards out sooner, I think Dylan Napper had two close together to each other that were high tackles. In isolation of those tackles, I've got no problem with them not being cards, but I think what it did do is amp up the feelings maybe to an extent, and then you had people like Bentley and McAlorum getting very close to the line. McAlorum treaded just over the line and got a sin bin in himself as well, but for probably not as severe an act as the Napper ones, but I think it was more the melees that came about on those stuff from Bentley and McAlorum, particularly those two together at each other.
Yeah, I think I felt like Child was trying to let the game flow, but it was very much, and he wasn't trying to get heavy-handed with the cards, and wasn't trying to bring them out, but it was like the players wanted to keep going until it happened.
Yeah, it gave the players a chance to play rugby league, and they decided that they didn't want to.
Yeah, and then with hindsight, I think you can look back and say, oh, well, he should have carded people earlier. But actually, if the players had shown any sort of common sense, and calmed themselves down, then, actually him not sin binning people sooner would have shown that it was a good move.
Yeah, I agree. I think he gave the players a chance. I don't think he was out of line. I think he did as much as he could to manage the game, because the players didn't respond to him having conversations and making indications that he wouldn't be, that he'd be happy to sit people down if they try and take the game out of his hands. And it just boiled over, and then it just seemed to always be there, that sort of level of stuff.
You were just constantly waiting for the next thing, weren't you?
Yeah, the next player to fall over and try and get a penalty, or the next player to react angrily to any sort of tackle from the opposition.
Yeah.
The next player to try and step across a player. Just everything seemed like they wanted to have this sort of fight rather than play rugby, and I think Leeds, to their credit, occasionally played rugby, whereas Catalans, I don't feel like they played much
it
rugby
didn't
in the
feel
whole
like
game.
They were there to play rugby. It felt like they were there looking for a scrap.
Yeah, that's a fair comment.
Whereas I felt like Leeds were more looking to play rugby, and at times got drawn into the scraps.
Yeah, well, look, for Catalans, that's the end of their season. I think reflecting on their season, a 4th place finishing out in the first week of the playoffs at home. That'll be, I think, disappointing after last year being the League Leaders Shield winners and the runners-up in the grand final. But having said that, consistency of another top 4 finish, another season where there's been a lot more young French players played for a lot more minutes. It's another step along the way to a consistently strong Catalan side, you would think.
Yeah. I must just comment, how enormous is Sam Walters?
Yeah, he's a tall fella, isn't he?
Yeah.
There is a new crop of like noticeably tall guys. You've got Lecam at Catalans, although I was reading just before we started recording that it looks like he's on his way out. Of one of the players maybe looking at the door at Catalans, with Farhay and Langy and Ben Julian being other ones that seem to be looking for new jobs for next year. But yeah, you're right. He's a big lad. And Leeds go, moving on. We'll talk a bit more about some of the injury stories and stuff around Leeds, I suppose, when we do the predictions and previews for the semi-finals. But Morgan Gannon's one of the players that's going to be out. He left the game with a concussion, failed his HIA, and Mikulecki was being monitored for a shoulder injury. So they didn't come out of this completely unscathed either, didn't the Rhinos?
No, I mean, that one on Gannon, yeah, you'd have been very surprised if he hadn't failed his HIA.
Yeah, I think what the HIA we're going to talk about in the next game as well. Another one where the player just seemed absolutely knocked out before he'd hit the floor, sort of thing. So he wasn't surprised by the outcome. Okie dokes, let's move on to the second game then. The game in Huddersfield, where at half-time Salford had run out to a 16-0 lead. And they finished 28 points to 0 winners away at Huddersfield. 6,374 was the crowd. Robert Hicks was the referee. Interestingly, that 66% of games were won by the home team during the regular season in Super League this year, a slightly higher than normal percentage. And yet the away teams have come out winners in the first 2 playoff games. And I'm talking about that as a stat because there is no team stats to talk about, because whilst it is the playoffs, the Super League website has chosen not to include Tyler Dupree's numbers in the website.
Yeah, you'd think after a year. That's
right, yeah. They haven't, my sort of passive-aggressive tweet at them didn't get any response either, so we'll see if they fix it at some point, but I doubt it very much now. What about the individuals? We do know how they performed. So
individually for Salford, it was Elijah Taylor with 49 tackles. It was Andy Ackers with 1 try, 177 metres and 2 clean breaks. Callum Watkins, who we keep mentioning, scored 1 try and made 44 tackles, and Tim Laffey with 124 metres. For the losing Huddersfield, it was Seb Ikahihifa with 10 tackle busts and 161 metres. Leroy Kudja with 145 metres, Innes Senior with 136 metres, and Chris Hill with 123 metres.
Brendan Loftus said, fun game. Salford on the rise with Huddersfield on the slide as they near the end of the season. Salford playing with smiles on their faces and are really good to watch. Great to see the away end being pretty full. Unfortunately, with Croft now out the semi with Saints, it might be too much for them. Hope they continue their rise next year, watching us a neutral. Like Rowley's quote about mugs and champions.
Dr. Hideous said, Huddersfield looked off the pace until the game got a bit spicy with Braley's off the ball shoulder charge and the resulting handbags. Huddersfield communication failures and handling errors screwed up their opportunities and gave many to Salford. Salford were far from perfect, making too many errors themselves. Excellent tackling from both sides.
Esther said, wow, how good was Salford? Huddersfield never looked like scoring.
Frogmore said, trying to work out if Huddersfield are shy or if the Devils are going on to win the league.
I got a message from Frogmore actually that I forgot to reply to the other night saying, did I send in a fan view this weekend? If I did, I was pissed. So I hope it makes sense. That actually quite makes sense. Mark Hay said, the undervalued, underestimated, underfunded Reds, or Blacks on this occasion, Devils, were at it again in superlative attacking form as they dispatched the Salford number 2 coached and manned team, otherwise known as Huddersfield. Attacking flair, camaraderie and will to win against a will again beat overfunded, structured and boring rugby outlook. What a great away following watching the Reds destroy the soulless Giants. Ackers is rejuvenated as well as England-bound Callum Watkins led the Reds to an amazing victory. Snide is ageless and the forwards are underestimated and firing. The obvious negative is Croft's HIA. All will say we are no chance against Saints. However, Atkins is a great infill and Rolly Ball is magic.
St David said, Salford too fast with and without the ball. High risk, high reward rugby. Croft is a brilliant player to watch, but not the only one. Terrific away following. Shame they don't fill their home games with a team this good.
Stevie T said the Giants have had a good season, third in the table, got to the Challenge Cup final. However, this loss against Salford at home was a downer. I thought Salford played really well and we could not handle it. We just could not find an answer to their play. So to go out on a whimper and be nilled at home is hugely disappointing. Our season is now over, but we still have some good memories of the 2022 season. I think we knew the start was going to be big. In this game, didn't we? And Salford just started too fast and too fluently for Huddersfield, and it is what we've been seeing from Salford. You know, execution of scrum plays. Croft, a really big running threat, which no team seems to have got a good enough handle of. Watkins, is unique in a way with his support play from the back row because he still, when he gets into full flow, has that sort of centres running style and stride and powerful runner that he is. So he's got the speed to back up most breaks that anyone makes anyway, and he supported Croft on his one. And Lafay's still a skillful offloader, but even the middles in this game were getting the offloads away. Mark said about underestimated forwards for Salford, and yeah, I think that they're not necessarily underestimated. They are like average players when you look at the body of work of their careers. But I think what Rowley is doing is he's getting them to do exactly the best that they can do. He's giving them very clear instructions, they understand their role, and in this game they understood that getting some offloads away was one way to make Huddersfield have to make extra efforts and weaken the impact of Huddersfield being able to play to their structures. If you're tiring them out and stretching them about and stuff, then when they get the ball, they're not as equipped to get straight into their structures. So, Salford were exceptional, especially in the first 25 minutes.
You've also got the additional thing that, you know, actually, even if Huddersfield have an amazing defensive set, keep Salford pinned back. Oh, never mind, give the ball to Mark Sneyd, he'll kick a 20-40.
Yeah, well, that 20-40 was a huge pressure release, wasn't it?
Yeah.
In the game.
You know, his kicking game, time and time again, was massive. So, you know, for all that, I love Brodie Croft. I think he's a great player. For all that, you know, his running game, his taking on the line and everything else was exceptional. You know, you balance that with Sneyd, who can suddenly put that kick in to, you know, split your back line, or because I think there was the 140-20 and 120-40 in the game. You know, and that's just what you need, isn't it? When maybe you haven't got as many meters in your set.
Well, and it came at a crucial time because Brealey had got sin-binned. Dr. Hideous mentioned it. It was a clear and obvious sin-bin in. No one's got any arguments with the Brealey sin-bin in taking out Lola here off the ball.
I mean, totally stupid. Why?
Well, there was still. I guess Lola here was probably just about favourite to get to the ball, but there was plenty of Salford players coming back, weren't there, to cover the play. But in that period, that 10-minute period, Salford did have one breakaway, I think, where Cross had an opportunity and it didn't quite sit up for him. But other than that, it was all played near the Salford line. Yeah. And it was the first period of the game, and the first period was seen for a good period of time, actually, where Salford's win was underpinned by their defensive resolve, contributed to by Huddersfield being really sloppy in attack. You know, really poor. but there was no